After a night with his mistress, Korean billionaire CEO found diamond ring and a note saying goodbye. The Seoul skyline glittered like 1,000 cold stars as Jung-hoon Park's Rolls-Royce glided through the empty streets before dawn. His collar was loosened, his brioni suit wrinkled from a night not spent in board meetings. The scent of Chanel No. 5 clung to him like a sin he couldn't wash away. Not that he wanted to, not yet. The perfume reminded him of Na-young's skin against his, of whispered promises in luxury hotel sheets, of a woman who made him feel powerful in ways his wife never could. Jung-hoon felt invincible. The kind of invincible that comes with owning half of Gangnam skyline and having just secured a merger that would make Park Industries the largest technology conglomerate in Asia. The kind of invincible that makes a man believe he deserves whatever and whoever he wants. The kind of invincible that blinds a man to the cracks forming beneath his carefully constructed facade. His phone had been vibrating all night. 15 missed calls. 23 messages. He didn't bother checking. It would be Maya again, his pregnant wife of 5 years, probably crying about doctor appointments or nursery colors or some other trivial matter that bored him to his core. Pregnant women are so emotional, he muttered, straightening his platinum watch. He was tired of playing the attentive husband when there was nothing waiting at home but her silent disappointment and those eyes that used to shine with admiration but now only reflected a dull resignation. If this opening already has your pulse up, take a second to subscribe right now. Then drop a comment below telling me what you'd do if a secret like this shattered the life you built. Stay with me. This one cuts deep. The elevator to the penthouse felt slower than usual. Or maybe it was the dread of another confrontation. Another night of Maya's quiet tears as she pretended not to notice the lipstick on his collar. The perfume that wasn't hers. The late hours that had nothing to do with work. He rehearsed his excuses like battle plans. The negotiations ran late. You're being paranoid again. This merger is worth billions. Do you think I have time for anything else? The words felt practiced on his tongue. A script he'd performed too many times. But when the elevator doors slid open to his penthouse, Jung-hoon was met with silence. Not the tense, accusatory silence he'd grown accustomed to, but something hollow and final. Something that made his skin prickle with fear. The 7,000 square feet of luxury felt suddenly vast and empty, as if the soul of the home had been extracted, leaving only cold marble and glass. Maya? He called, loosening his tie further, irritated already. His voice echoed back to him, unfamiliar in the stillness. That's when he saw it. There, on the antique glass table that Maya had selected during their trip to Venice. The only piece she had insisted on displaying despite his preference for Korean minimalism, sat her wedding ring. Not just any diamond, but the rare pink diamond he had specially cut to match the magnolias she loved, the one that had made headlines for its extravagant price tag. Beside it lay a single folded note, written in her elegant handwriting, the strokes precise and controlled despite what must have been emotional turmoil. For a moment time stuttered. The room seemed to tilt beneath his feet. His throat constricted with something raw and unfamiliar pushing up from a place he'd spent years ignoring. A cold sweat broke across his forehead as the implications began to register. That's when he noticed the other absences. The empty spaces that screamed louder than any accusation. Maya's designer handbags were missing from their display shelf. The wooden ankh her grandmother had given her on their wedding day, gone from the glass case. The refrigerator door stood slightly ajar. Inside, the prenatal vitamins were missing. So was the sonogram picture she'd taped to their bedroom mirror, the only thing she ever did without asking his permission first. The reality slammed into Jung-hoon harder than any failed business deal. Maya hadn't left in anger or impulse. She'd left with intention, with finality, with knowledge. This wasn't a tantrum to be soothed with expensive gifts. This was exodus. His fingers trembled as he opened the letter, its edges sharp against his skin. Every breath felt shallow, insufficient. He expected rage, accusations, tears captured in ink. But what he read instead made his stomach drop, because it was quiet, calm. Too calm for a woman 5 months pregnant with his heir. It was the kind of calm that comes when someone finally breaks in silence, when the last thread of hope has been severed. I hope she was worth what you're about to lose. 7 words. No explanation needed. No dramatic farewell. Just a simple, devastating truth that cut through years of his arrogance. Before he could process the words, he noticed something else. Something he'd missed at first. Maya had left her ancestor portrait on the floor near their bedroom door. The painting more precious to her than any diamond he'd ever given her. The one connection to her family heritage she cherished above all else. The portrait of her great-grandmother, a civil rights activist from Atlanta, lay discarded like a piece of trash. He knew what this meant. A complete severing of ties, a rejection of the family she had married into. This wasn't just leaving. This was erasing. A sudden, suffocating dread swallowed Jung-hoon whole. Because if Maya walked away this completely, then she knew everything. And if she knew everything, someone must have told her. Someone who wanted him destroyed. Someone already moving against him. He didn't know who, but he was about to find out. And when he did, nothing in his empire would survive it. The thought lodged in his chest like a shard of ice. For the first time in decades, Jung-hoon Park felt something he had forgotten existed. Pure, unadulterated fear. If you've ever witnessed how quickly a seemingly perfect life can unravel, stay with me. This story might reveal truths about power, betrayal, and redemption that we rarely see behind closed doors. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves dignity and love. The moment Jung-hoon finished reading Maya's note, the penthouse seemed to shift around him. The space that once felt like a showcase of his wealth. The Italian marble, the custom furniture, the priceless art, now felt like a museum of everything he'd used to cage her. Too perfect, too empty, too final. Each luxury item he'd purchased to mark his success now looked like what they truly were. Compensation for emotional absence, substitutes for genuine connection. He walked deeper into the living room, his footsteps bouncing off the high ceilings with a hollowness that hadn't been there before. Maya's collection of jazz records, the ones he complained disrupted his concentration, wasn't on the built-in shelves. The hand-woven throw she'd curl under during cold soul evenings was gone. Even her collection of poetry books and art catalogs, the ones she'd read aloud in her melodic voice when she thought he was listening, had vanished from the shelves. Jung-hoon's pulse hammered. Maya never left projects unfinished. She never left without telling him where she was going, unless she'd stopped feeling like she owed him anything at all. The thought was so foreign it felt impossible. Maya, the brilliant art curator who rearranged her entire existence to fit into his world, had finally decided he wasn't worth accommodating anymore. He moved toward the hallway, the heated floor beneath his Italian leather shoes suddenly cold. Their bedroom door was slightly open, as if she hadn't bothered to close it behind her. Or maybe she wanted him to see the truth of what she'd taken and what she'd left behind. He pushed the door open. The room looked stripped, like someone had methodically removed every trace of warmth overnight. The closet doors hung open, revealing empty hangers where her carefully selected designer dresses once hung. The drawer where she kept her pregnancy journals was half open, every carefully written page missing. The scent of her lotion still hung in the air, a ghost of her presence that somehow made her absence more acute. But the silence was what pierced him, heavy, accusing. It made the walls feel too close, the air too thin. The same silence she'd offered him for months when he came home late, when he missed appointments, when he took business calls during their anniversary dinner. The silence he'd mistaken for acceptance was actually her slow withdrawal, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to take. Near the window, he noticed a detail that turned his stomach. Her prenatal appointment schedule, usually pinned to her vanity mirror, lay torn in half on the floor. And the sonogram image, the tiny outline of their child, their son, the heir he'd demanded, had been carefully removed from its frame. The empty frame stared back at him, an indictment of his failure. He swallowed hard. That picture was everything to Maya. She'd stare at it every night before bed, whispering promises she thought he couldn't hear. Mama loves you. Mama will protect you. Mama will give you a life filled with warmth. But he had heard. He just never cared enough to answer. He never thought to place his hand on her growing belly, to whisper his own promises, to acknowledge the life they'd created. Now the child he'd seen as merely his legacy was being carried away from him, inside a woman who no longer recognized him as worthy of fatherhood. He stepped back, suddenly dizzy, gripping the edge of the dresser. Where would she go? Her family in Atlanta had been wary of him from the start, viewing his pursuit of their daughter with concern. Her friends in Seoul were mostly fellow expatriates and international artists who had always kept their distance from him. She wasn't completely isolated. He had tried, but Maya's independence had proven difficult to fully contain. But someone helped her. Someone gave her the courage to walk away. Someone with resources, with connections, with a reason to want Jung-hoon vulnerable. A bitter fear crawled up his spine as he stared at the barren room. For the first time, he felt something he wasn't used to feeling: powerless. The sensation was so foreign he almost didn't recognize it. Jung-hoon Park, who controlled billion-dollar negotiations with a single nod, who could make or break careers with a word, who had politicians and judges in his pocket, couldn't control the one person he'd taken most for granted. And that was when he noticed the final blow. On the nightstand sat the sketchbook he'd given her when they first married, before he'd convinced her that a Park wife didn't need a career as an artist and curator, no matter how renowned she'd been in the international art world. She used that sketchbook for everything: drafting exhibition layouts, sketching art pieces she wanted to acquire, jotting down ideas for the gallery she dreamed of opening before meeting him. The one connection she still had to her identity before she became Mrs. Park. She'd left it behind. A symbol. A message. Maya wasn't coming back. She wasn't just escaping a bad marriage. She was shedding an entire identity he'd forced upon her. And whoever helped her disappear wasn't finished with Jung-hoon Park. This was just the opening move in a game he didn't realize he was playing. A game where, for once, he wasn't the one making the rules. The morning after Maya left, Jung-hoon sat at the edge of their king-sized bed, staring at the hollow imprint her body once made beside him. For years, he told himself their marriage was a perfect arrangement. She got wealth and status. He got beauty, cultural prestige, and the proper international image his shareholders expected. He never cared to wonder whether she felt the same. He never stopped to question if the quiet submission he mistook for contentment was actually a woman slowly dying inside. Now, the quietness pressing around him forced memories to surface. Memories he'd buried beneath acquisition reports, board meetings, and the thrill of Na-young's body. He remembered the first moment Maya hinted something was wrong. It was a cold February night, wind rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse. She'd been sitting at her desk, hands trembling as she tried to finish an essay for an international art journal, maintaining the one connection to her former career that he'd reluctantly allowed. When he walked in, smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume, she didn't ask where he'd been. She just looked at him with tired eyes and said, "I can't be your trophy anymore, Jung-hoon." He told her she was being dramatic, that she should be grateful for the life he provided, that millions of women would trade places with her in a heartbeat, that she was lucky he had chosen her to bring international sophistication to his image. Then there was the night she showed him their baby's first strong heartbeat on an ultrasound video. She held her phone up, smiling nervously, a fragile hope in her eyes that maybe this, finally, would be something they could share. "I thought you'd want to see it," she whispered. He watched for 2 seconds before his phone buzzed with a message from Na-young, and he turned away. "Board emergency," he said. Maya nodded as if she believed him, but her eyes had dimmed. Another tiny death he hadn't bothered to notice. Now those cracks, the ones he'd ignored, spread wide and undeniable in his memory. Every moment she tried to connect, every time he pushed her away, every soft plea, every quiet surrender. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration burning under his skin. "She wouldn't just leave," he muttered to himself. "Someone got to her. Someone's manipulating her." He couldn't accept the truth that he was the reason, that each dismissal, each missed dinner, each lie about late meetings, each suggestion that she dim her brilliance to fit into his world, had been a brick in the wall she finally decided to climb. Acknowledging his role would require a level of self-reflection Jung-hoon had spent a lifetime avoiding. It was easier to blame outside forces, to create enemies rather than look in the mirror. He stood up abruptly, pacing the room. His mind raced through names, board members, competitors, family connections. Who would Maya trust enough to run to? She was private, cautious. She didn't open up easily to the sole elite. For the first time, he realized how little he knew about his own wife's inner life, her thoughts, her fears. The woman who had shared his bed for 5 years was, in many ways, a stranger to him. Unless Jung-hoon froze as a name crept into his thoughts. Unwelcome and sharp. Kim Ji-woo. Ji-woo, the brilliant director who'd rejected his advances 6 years ago and became his most formidable business rival. Ji-woo, who once complimented Maya's exhibition curation at an international art fair in a way that made his wife's face light up with genuine pleasure. Ji-woo, who lingered a beat too long when Maya spoke at corporate events, who asked questions about her opinions, her thoughts, treating her like a person rather than an accessory. Ji-woo, who had everything Jung-hoon feared losing: power, respect, and a moral compass people admired. No, Jung-hoon whispered, the possibility too terrible to contemplate. But the doubt dug in deeper. Had Maya reached out to Ji-woo? Had the older woman helped her disappear? The thought of his wife finding refuge with the one woman who had ever rejected him, who had built an empire that rivaled his own, who had publicly questioned his business ethics. It was unbearable. It was an alliance that threatened everything. The possibility gnawed at him, lighting a cold fury in his chest. If Ji-woo had inserted herself into his marriage, into his legacy, it wouldn't just be betrayal. It would be war. And Jung-hoon had spent his career crushing his enemies without mercy. But a new, uncomfortable thought slipped through his defenses. What if this time he was outmatched? What if the women he'd dismissed as inconsequential, his brilliant wife with her international art connections, his Korean business rival with her impeccable reputation, had been planning his downfall all along? Jung-hoon had no idea he was already losing. The game had started months ago, and he hadn't even known he was a player. By the time the sun fully climbed over Seoul's skyscrapers, Jung-hoon was no longer angry. He was obsessed. He tore through the penthouse like a man hunting ghosts. Every drawer, every closet, every forgotten corner. But the more he searched for clues, the more he realized how much he'd missed while Maya was still there. He hadn't expected to find her journal hidden inside a hollow book on art theory, the kind of reading he'd dismissed as useless intellectualism. The leather cover was soft, worn, clearly touched every day. A secret record of thoughts she never shared aloud, feelings she carefully concealed behind perfect makeup and silent nods. He hesitated before opening it, but curiosity overpowered guilt, something he rarely felt anyway. The idea that Maya had thoughts he wasn't privy to, a world inside her head he couldn't access, felt like a betrayal in itself, as if her private thoughts belonged to him as much as the rest of her did. The handwriting on the first page hit him like a punch. I don't recognize my husband anymore. The man I married has disappeared beneath layers of ambition and cruelty. Sometimes I wonder if he was ever really there at all. The words were a knife between his ribs, not because they were untrue, but because they were written with such clarity, such certainty. This wasn't a fleeting emotion. This was a conclusion reached after long, careful observation. He flipped to another entry. He doesn't touch me. He doesn't look at me. I'm terrified to bring this child into a life where I feel invisible. Will my son learn that women are decorations to be arranged and ignored? Will he think love is something you purchase rather than give freely? The air went thin again, like someone had pressed a fist against his chest. He turned more pages, each one sharper than the last. I think he's lying. I think he's seeing someone. I smelled perfume on him tonight. It wasn't mine. I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear. I don't even know why I'm protecting his pride when he tramples on mine daily. Entry after entry, months of quiet suffering, laid bare what he had refused to see. The gradual death of love, of respect, of hope. The systematic dismantling of a woman's spirit. his own role in it chronicled in painful detail. But one message stood out, circled 3 times. Why is Na Young calling him this late? The date was from 2 months ago. His stomach churned. She had known, or at least suspected, long before the night she left. His affair hadn't been the secret he thought it was. Maya had simply been gathering evidence, watching, waiting, planning her exit with the same methodical care she applied to everything in her life. And she wrote something even more damning a few pages later. I tried calling director Kim Ji-woo for advice. She understood immediately, without judgment. She said some cages are made of gold, but they're still cages. She said I deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. No one has told me that in years. I almost didn't recognize the feeling, being treated like a person rather than a possession. Jung-hoon froze. Ji-woo again. The thought of Maya reaching out to another woman, especially his rival, sent a hot, acidic jealousy coursing through him. Not the jealousy of a loving husband, but the rage of an owner whose property has been touched. The idea that Maya had confided in Ji-woo, had shared the ugly truth of their marriage, had shown vulnerability to someone he considered an enemy. It was intolerable. He slammed the journal shut, pacing like a cornered animal, yanking at his tie until the expensive silk crumpled in his fist. Kim Ji-woo was wealthy, respected, and every inch the leader Jung-hoon pretended to be. If Ji-woo wanted to turn Maya against him, it would be effortless. And Maya was vulnerable enough for someone like Ji-woo to swoop in, comfort her, protect her. The idea twisted Jung-hoon's insides, not because he loved his wife, but because he couldn't bear the thought of losing her to Ji-woo. Losing anything to Ji-woo. He snatched his coat and stormed out of the penthouse. He needed answers now. And the first place he'd check, the only place Maya might return to, was her old office at the Seoul International Art Foundation. The place where she'd once been celebrated as one of the most innovative curators in the Asian art world, before he convinced her that being his wife was achievement enough. But as he reached the elevator, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking for her. No name, no signature, just 3 words. His breath stalled. Someone was helping Maya. And now they were threatening him. He stared at the message, rage simmering under his skin. Whoever sent it had made a mistake. They thought fear would stop him. They thought a simple warning would be enough to make Jung-hoon Park back down. They had no idea who he was. They had no idea what he was capable of when cornered. Or so he told himself, as the first trickle of real doubt crept into his consciousness. The choices we make when everything is at stake reveal who we truly are. If you're finding yourself invested in Maya's journey to reclaim her dignity, hit subscribe to join our community of viewers who appreciate stories of resilience against overwhelming odds. Jung-hoon's footsteps echoed through the polished marble floors of the Seoul International Art Foundation. The staff stared as he approached the reception desk, his presence like a storm cloud on an otherwise clear day. He hadn't bothered visiting this place in years, not since Maya had reluctantly stepped down from her position at his insistence. I need to see Maya Park, he demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. The receptionist's smile faltered. Mrs. Park hasn't worked here in 5 years, sir. Has she been here recently? Has she contacted anyone? His voice carried across the lobby, causing several heads to turn. I'm sorry, I wouldn't know. Then find someone who does, he snapped. A moment later, a slender woman in her 60s appeared. Jung-hoon recognized her as the foundation's director, one of the few people who had openly questioned Maya's abrupt departure years ago. Mr. Park, she said, her tone clipped. This is unexpected. Where's my wife? He demanded. The woman's eyes hardened. Maya is not here. And if she were, I doubt she'd want to see you. Jung-hoon stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. You don't understand. She's pregnant with my son. She's not thinking clearly. On the contrary, the director replied. I believe Maya is thinking clearly for the first time in years. His jaw clenched. You've spoken to her. It wasn't a question, but the director answered anyway. She called yesterday to discuss reclaiming her career. Beyond that, I have nothing to tell you. I own half the art in this building, Jung-hoon hissed. I could destroy this foundation with one phone call. The woman didn't flinch. And yet, it would not bring your wife back. Interesting, isn't it? All that power, and the one thing you want most has slipped through your fingers. He wanted to scream, to threaten, to remind this woman who he was. But the truth of her words paralyzed him. Instead, he turned sharply and stormed toward the exit, nearly colliding with a young intern carrying a stack of catalogs. As the papers scattered across the floor, Jung-hoon caught sight of one, an announcement for an upcoming exhibition with Kim Ji-woo's corporation listed as the primary sponsor. And there, at the bottom of the page, a name that made his blood freeze. Maya Johnson Park, guest curator. This wasn't just coincidence. This was coordinated. Maya wasn't just leaving him. She was reclaiming the career he'd forced her to abandon, with the help of the one person he considered his greatest enemy. His phone buzzed again as he stepped outside. Another message from the unknown number. The Financial Supervisory Service has your offshore account numbers. His blood ran cold. This was no longer about his marriage. This was about his empire, his freedom, his very survival. Someone was systematically dismantling everything he had built, piece by calculated piece. And he was starting to realize who that someone might be. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Ji-woo's sleek black Genesis, staring out at the Seoul skyline she'd once found so intimidating. 5 years ago, she'd been an acclaimed young curator, known for her innovative approach to blending Western and Eastern artistic traditions. The art world had been her domain, a place where her voice mattered, where her vision was valued. Then she met Jung-hoon Park. Charismatic, powerful, relentless in his pursuit. He'd showered her with attention, with respect, with promises of a life where her art would flourish under his patronage. Their whirlwind romance had captivated Seoul society, the powerful Korean CEO and the brilliant American curator. By the time she realized the truth, that he wanted a trophy, not a partner, the golden cage had already closed around her. You're very quiet, Ji-woo observed, breaking into her thoughts. Maya rested a hand protectively on her swollen belly. Just processing. It doesn't feel real yet. Freedom rarely does at first, Ji-woo replied. Especially when you've spent years convincing yourself you didn't deserve it. Maya turned to look at the older woman. Ji-woo had been a peripheral figure in her life until recently. A powerful CEO whom Jung-hoon frequently complained about. A woman he clearly resented for refusing to bend to his will. It wasn't until the charity gala 3 months ago that they'd truly connected. I still can't believe you're doing this, Maya said softly. Helping me could cost you. Ji-woo's expression remained impassive, but her hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Jung-hoon has hurt too many people for too long. Sometimes, Maya, fighting back isn't just an option, it's a responsibility. They arrived at a modern apartment building in a quiet neighborhood far from Gangnam's glitter. The security was discreet but thorough, a keycard, a fingerprint scanner, a concierge who nodded respectfully at Ji-woo without asking questions. This building belongs to my company, Ji-woo explained as they rode the elevator to the 12th floor. The apartment is registered under a subsidiary. Jung-hoon won't find you here. When the door opened, Maya stepped into a space so unlike the cold opulence of Jung-hoon's penthouse that she nearly gasped. Warm colors, comfortable furniture, walls lined with art books. A home designed for living, not displaying. There's a studio in the second bedroom, Ji-woo said, setting down Maya's suitcase. I thought you might want to work. Maya's throat tightened. Jung-hoon had converted her studio into a cigar room 2 years ago, claiming her art supplies made the penthouse look cluttered. She hadn't picked up a brush since. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Ji-woo hesitated, then spoke with careful precision. There's something else you should know. The foundation isn't the only one looking into Jung-hoon's business practices. Maya frowned. What do you mean? I've been gathering evidence for months. Financial irregularities, tax evasion, bribery. This morning, I sent it to the authorities. Maya sank onto the couch, stunned. You're dismantling his company? Jiwoo's gaze was steady. I'm ensuring he faces consequences, perhaps for the first time in his life. The question is whether you want to be part of it. Part of destroying him? Part of justice, Jiwoo corrected softly. Your testimony could help a lot of people he's hurt, but it's your choice. You can stay completely separate from it all if you prefer. Maya looked down at her hands, at the pale strip of skin where her wedding ring had been. For 5 years, Jung-hoon had slowly erased her career, her confidence, her voice. He'd taken everything piece by piece, all while convincing her she should be grateful. I need to think, she said finally. Jiwoo nodded. Take all the time you need. But remember, Maya, you're stronger than he ever allowed you to believe. As Jiwoo left, Maya moved to the window, watching Seoul spread out beneath her. Somewhere in that glittering landscape, Jung-hoon was realizing he'd lost control. For the first time in their relationship, she held power he couldn't touch. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jiwoo. The exhibition offer is real. They want you back. This isn't charity. It's recognition of your talent. Maya placed a hand over her heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath her palm. The woman who had entered Jung-hoon's world 5 years ago might have been too overwhelmed to seize this chance. But the woman standing here now, with her child growing beneath her heart and the weight of Jung-hoon's control finally lifted, wasn't that person anymore. She was someone new, someone reclaiming her voice, one careful step at a time. Jung-hoon stormed into his company headquarters, ignoring the startled glances of his employees. The message about the financial supervisory service had shaken him more than he cared to admit. His offshore accounts were supposed to be untraceable, known only to him and his most trusted financial advisor. Get Kong Sung-min in my office now, he barked at his assistant. 10 minutes later, Kong entered, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous tension. Mr. Park, there's something you should. Who accessed my accounts? Jung-hoon interrupted. Who's been talking to the FSS? Kong swallowed visibly. Sir, they contacted us this morning. They have documentation. Transfers, communications, everything. That's impossible. Those records were encrypted. Someone provided them with access codes, Kong said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And evidence of the shell companies in Singapore. Jung-hoon's mind raced. Only 3 people had those codes. Himself, Kong, and Na-young, who had seen them on his tablet during a careless moment. A cold dread washed over him. Had Na-young betrayed him? Or was it Maya who had somehow found his passwords? Sir, Kong continued, there's more. The board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. There. He hesitated. They're what? Jung-hoon snapped. They're questioning your leadership. Chairman Lee received a comprehensive file this morning detailing financial irregularities going back 5 years. The room seemed to tilt. This wasn't just an investigation. This was a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. And it was happening with military precision. Get Na-young on the phone, he ordered. Sir, Ms. Na-young has taken a sudden leave of absence. Her assistant says she's traveling. Of course she was. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Na-young's sudden attention 6 months ago, her interest in his business dealings, the nights she'd spent at his penthouse while Maya was visiting her family in America. She hadn't been infatuated with him. She'd been gathering intelligence. But for whom? His phone rang. The caller ID showed Chairman Lee, the one man at Park Industries who could actually force Jung-hoon out. He considered ignoring it, but that would only delay the inevitable. Chairman, he answered, forcing his voice to remain steady. Jung-hoon, my office. Now. The call ended. As Jung-hoon made his way to the chairman's suite, employees averted their eyes. They already knew, he realized. The empire he'd spent a lifetime building was crumbling around him, and the whispers had already begun. Chairman Lee was not alone. Two board members sat with him, their expressions grim. On the table lay a thick folder with the Kim Group logo, Ji-woo's company, embossed on the cover. "Explain this?" Lee demanded, pushing the folder toward him. Jung-hoon's hands were surprisingly steady as he opened it. Inside were detailed records of every questionable financial decision he'd made in the past 5 years, the tax evasion, the bribery, the manipulation of stock prices. Each page was meticulous, annotated, damning. "This is a fabrication," he said automatically. "By whom?" Lee asked. "Your wife, who provided her testimony. Na-young, who confirmed the details. Or Ji-woo, who simply compiled what everyone already knew but were too afraid to say." Jung-hoon's mind raced. Maya had testified against him? Quiet, accommodating Maya, who barely raised her voice even when he'd been at his worst. "Maya doesn't understand business," he said dismissively. "She's pregnant, emotional, confused. She understands betrayal," Lee interrupted. "And she's provided the FSS with evidence from your home office. It seems you underestimated her intelligence as well as her courage." The realization hit Jung-hoon like a physical blow. The nights Maya had spent alone in the penthouse while he was with Na-young. The times he'd caught her in his office and assumed she was just looking for him. She hadn't been the passive, obedient wife he'd thought. She'd been watching, waiting, collecting evidence of his crimes with the same careful patience she once applied to curating exhibitions. And Ji-woo, his business rival, the woman who'd rejected his advances years ago, had given Maya the platform and protection she needed to bring it all to light. "The board has voted," Lee said, his voice cutting through Jung-hoon's thoughts. "You're suspended, effective immediately. The FSS will be here within the hour. I suggest you call your lawyer." Jung-hoon wanted to rage, to threaten, to remind them who had built this company from nothing. But the evidence before him was irrefutable. The power he'd wielded so carelessly had turned against him. And for the first time in his life, Jung-hoon Park had no move left to make. Except one. He had to find Maya. Maya tried to sleep that night in the quiet apartment Ji-woo had provided, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jung-hoon's face. Not angry, but wounded, betrayed, as if she were the one who had destroyed their marriage rather than him. She knew what was happening across the city. Ji-woo had kept her updated throughout the day. Jung-hoon's suspension, the FSS investigation, the media beginning to circle as rumors spread about Park Industries' impending downfall. She hadn't wanted this. Not exactly. When she'd first begun collecting evidence from Jung-hoon's office, it had been self-preservation. Insurance in case he ever tried to take their child from her. She hadn't intended to bring down his entire empire. But when Ji-woo had shown her how Jung-hoon's business practices had hurt countless people, the small companies he'd crushed, the families left destitute, the women in his employ who suffered harassment without recourse, Maya realized that staying silent would make her complicit. So she'd made her choice. She'd given her testimony. And now, alone in the dark, she faced the weight of that decision. A sharp pain shot through her abdomen, sudden and fierce. She gasped, clutching at her belly. The baby kicked frantically in response, as if sensing her distress. "It's okay," she whispered, rubbing circles on her stomach. "We're okay." But another pain followed, stronger than the first. And another. Maya reached for her phone, hands shaking as she dialed Ji-woo's number. "Something's wrong," she managed when Ji-woo answered. "The baby." "I'm on my way," Ji-woo said immediately. "Don't move." Maya tried to breathe through the pain, counting seconds between contractions the way her doctor had taught her. But it was too soon. She was only 28 weeks along. The baby wasn't ready. By the time Ji-woo arrived, Maya was doubled over, sweat beading on her forehead. The older woman took one look at her and called an ambulance, her voice calm but urgent. "Stay with me," Ji-woo said, supporting Maya's weight as they waited. "Focus on my voice." "It's too early," Maya gasped. "He can't come yet." Ji-woo's arm tightened around her. "You're both going to be fine. I promise you." The ambulance ride passed in a blur of pain and fear. At the hospital, doctors rushed Maya into an examination room, their expressions serious as they monitored the baby's heart rate and Maya's contractions. "Preterm labor," she heard one doctor say. "We need to stop it if we can." Jiwoo stayed by her side, a steady presence in the chaos. She held Maya's hand through each contraction, wiped her brow, advocated fiercely when a nurse suggested calling Maya's husband. "I'm her family now," Jiwoo said with quiet authority. "Her husband is not to be contacted." Hours passed in a haze of medication and monitoring. The contractions finally began to subside, the baby's heart rate stabilizing. Maya drifted in and out of consciousness, exhausted beyond measure. She woke to sunlight streaming through hospital blinds and Jiwoo asleep in the chair beside her bed, still in yesterday's clothes. The sight brought tears to Maya's eyes. This woman, essentially a stranger 6 months ago, had shown her more care than Jung-hoon had in years of marriage. "Jiwoo," she whispered. The older woman woke instantly, alert despite her obvious fatigue. "How are you feeling?" "Better." "The baby?" "Stable," Jiwoo said, relief evident in her voice. "The doctor says you need complete bed rest for the next few weeks, but if we're careful, you should be able to carry to term." Maya nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you for staying." Jiwoo's expression softened in a way Maya had never seen before. "Where else would I be?" Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Jiwoo tensed, rising from her chair just as the door burst open. Jung-hoon stood there, wild-eyed and disheveled, nothing like the polished CO the world knew. Behind him, hospital security scrambled to intervene. "Maya," he breathed, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her shrink back against the pillows. Jiwoo moved between them, a shield. "You need to leave," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Now." Jung-hoon's eyes darted between them, comprehension dawning. "So it's true," he said softly. "It was you all along. Both of you." "This isn't about us," Jiwoo replied. "This is about what you've done. To Maya, to your company, to everyone who trusted you." Security guards appeared in the doorway, but Jung-hoon didn't seem to notice them. His attention had fixed on Maya's stomach, on the monitors tracking their child's heartbeat. "Is the baby okay?" he asked, and for the first time in months, Maya heard something genuine in his voice. Fear, concern, something almost like love. "No thanks to you," Jiwoo snapped, but Maya raised a hand, silencing her. "The baby's fine," she told Jung-hoon, "but I'm not. I haven't been fine for years." Jung-hoon took a step forward, desperation in every line of his body. "Maya, please. Whatever Jiwoo has told you, whatever you think you know." "I know everything," Maya interrupted, strength flowing into her voice. "I know about Na Young. I know about the offshore accounts. I know you never loved me, not really. I was just another acquisition, another symbol of your success." Jung-hoon flinched as if she'd struck him. "That's not true." "It is," she insisted. "And the worst part is, I let it happen. I let you convince me I was nothing without you, that my work, my voice, my very self was secondary to being Mrs. Park." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "But not anymore. I'm reclaiming my life, Jung-hoon. And our son will grow up knowing his mother is not a possession, not a trophy, but a woman of value and purpose." Jung-hoon's face crumpled, the mask of power and control falling away completely. For a moment, Maya glimpsed the man he might have been, vulnerable, human, capable of genuine feeling. But it was too late. Too many lines had been crossed, too many wounds inflicted. "Security will escort you out," Jiwoo said firmly. "If you try to contact Maya again, there will be legal consequences." Jung-hoon didn't resist as the guards took his arms. But at the doorway, he paused, looking back at Maya with eyes that held a lifetime of regret. "I never meant to break you," he said softly. Maya met his gaze steadily. "You didn't break me," she replied. "You just made me stronger." As the door closed behind him, Maya felt something release in her chest. A knot of fear and resentment she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten it was there. She turned to Jiwoo, whose expression held a mixture of concern and something deeper, something Maya wasn't ready to name. "What happens now?" Maya asked quietly. Jiwoo's smile was gentle but determined. "Now we rebuild, both of us, together." And for the first time in years, Maya believed in possibilities again. This story reminds us that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the first page of a better story. If Maya's journey from shadow to strength resonated with you, please share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by who leaves them, but by who they become afterward. Subscribe for more stories that illuminate the hidden strength within life's deepest wounds.